Okay, hello everyone. I am Santino Mancuso, aka David Cochran. I recently changed my name, so that's confusing for a lot of people. You'll find me under both names. Um, and I think this is our second meeting of Cosmobiology Institute. So the Cosmobiology Institute is a new organization. It's a nonprofit organization. So we are here to move research in astrology forward. And we're especially interested in using modern research methods in a rigorous, academically sound way. I believe this is our second meeting, and if I remember right, in the first meeting, I introduced some general ideas on research methods. We have a lot of talented people here, people with expertise in different areas. It doesn't matter how much expertise you have. We can all learn from each other, but we need a group of colleagues and associates to work together on research because research is way too big for one or two or three people. There's dozens and dozens and dozens of different research designs and issues and complexities and so many different things happening. And the Cosmobiology Institute is here to move the research forward. It's founded by people who believe that modern research methods are working. We can get measurable results. We're optimistic about it. There's evidence that this is working. So it's a lot of work. It requires a lot of expertise, a lot of resources. And so here we are together to do this. I'm guiding this show here of the research meetings, and we're here to do research. So what I want to do is I've corresponded with a few of you who are interested in research projects, have started research projects, and we can dive into any kind of research that you are interested in. The Institute is here to help you with whatever you want to pursue. I'm going to share my screen a second before I start taking input from you guys on what research you want to do. I can also jump in with two of you have sent me some details on the research that you want to pursue or are pursuing, and you're wanting feedback and ideas and discussion, and we can start that now. When you're doing research, if you're a serious researcher, you are probably desperate for conversation, feedback, and discussion because research is too complicated, too many things going on for any one person to be totally confident. There's too many stupid mistakes you can make and different perspectives and clever ideas people come up with. It's a team sport where you get together to get feedback and work together. So that's what it's all about. We need all of us sharing ideas to move this forward. Before I get into the projects that you guys are doing and the research you want to pursue, and we'll brainstorm and we'll find out what resources are to help you, let me share something from the Cosmobiology Institute website to show you some of the things that we've started. I'm going to share my screen. All right, and let me go to a browser and let's go to the Cosmobiology Institute website, which is simply cosmobiology.org. And there's the website, very simple website, home, mission, about, etc. We have big plans to promote research and to make it as affordable and as available as possible. Most of us are working completely so far as volunteers because we love this idea. What I want to show you, I think it's under training. No, it's under research. We have uploaded the guidelines. There's a short version, we call it the condensed version, and the complete version. And these guidelines took us hundreds of hours to write. This is very, very involved. There were three or four of us working on it to write guidelines in research. So this is well worth reading. If you're interested in astrological research, you can read the short version to not get too overwhelmed. And it goes into a lot of detail about different research designs, different issues, how they apply to research. There's no document that's going to be comprehensive and satisfy everybody. Again, research is a vast field, but I'm happy with what we did. We've covered things, I think, in a pretty fair and broad manner. So there are these research guidelines. Okay, I just wanted to mention that. Little by little, we're building this infrastructure for research. I just received in the mail a database of someone's gambling experiences where he has written down how much money he won or lost every 15 minutes in online gambling with hundreds and hundreds of cases. It's a database of information. So we want to build databases of things people are interested in so we can research it, go through the software tools and the methods available. Okay. Um, I received something from Jennifer and some things from Sravia. I think I'll share a little bit. Sravia, you said you would be in and out tonight. I think you're out at the moment. Are you here?
Yeah, I am here. There's family in town for Thanksgiving, so it's a crazy town with the children here. But
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
answer the questions.
Okay. Is it okay if I share with you what we discussed by email with everyone?
Absolutely.
Okay. I had a feeling you would say that. Uh, because um, you're very involved in some advanced research methods, and people like that are looking for an engagement. So let me share with you. I'm going to pull up this file. I started making notes on my conversations with Sravia, Jennifer, and Bernhard, all of whom are here. And let me share with you what Sravia is doing. And there's a lot more. She sent me some more emails, and we'll just learn about the different things that people can do. Okay, somebody put on their um, note, whatever you call it, annotation. I don't know how to remove that. Anyway, I'll just leave it there. Um, So, Sravia, you are involved in time series modeling, and you're specifically interested in looking at epilepsy. So, when people have an epileptic seizure, um, and you work with the Python language, um, with machine learning tools, and you've taken the Astrodean Swiss ephemeris. I guess you've got that running within Python, or at least you're working on it, and you want to build a model for when epileptic seizures occur. Is that reasonably correct? Why don't you?
Yeah. Yeah, that
Okay.
is correct. Yes. Yeah, I am pulling the data into Python completely, and I've gathered some data set from family and friends where, be it an absent seizure or a tonic-clonic, where they have the symptoms of moving their hands and stuff, but absent seizures are sometimes um, non, people could just see the person behaving normally, but they're just glaring into space and not responding to people addressing them, or things like that. All these are Neptunian traits, but every person has their own signature of planets that could be contributing to these events. So I'm trying to see um, the correlation between, if there is a astro signature. I'm using your terminology here.
Yeah.
Sentiment, but if the astro signatures are common between people, or everybody has their own astro signature with some highly correlated
Mm,
variables, because everybody's date of birth is different and every person is unique, and that's why I specifically am doing time series instead of correlation between epileptic episodes between a group of people. That's one of the
right.
main reasons, yeah, I opted the time series model.
Right. Okay. Let me underscore some points that you've made and generalize so that everybody can follow some of the key points because you are hitting A, B, C, D, right down the line, critical issues with research. So I want to conceptualize a lot of what you're saying for people. Um, Number one, data. No data, no research, right? So there's always a question of what the data is. So she has told us that the data is family and friends, and we're looking at, I'm calling them epileptic seizures. I don't know all the technical language. And um, so that's the data. Now, right away, you could start evaluating things. Is that good data? Is that preferable data? Okay. One of the big rules in is research is practical. It's not an ivory tower situation. So if you go around and you say, oh, well, that's not perfect, that's not ideal, you shouldn't be a researcher because what we do is we're down and dirty with the real world. So you do the best you can with the resources you have. So some people will say, is this good enough? Is that good enough? If you can make any progress at all in understanding something, it's good enough. You have to deal with the resources you have. Is that clear to everybody? In other words, it's real world situations. You rarely have ideal situations. As long as you have data that's better than nothing, you can make some discoveries. So data from family and friends is not the ideal way to get data. You want to have a database, you want to do random selection, etc. But she wants to focus on individuals because her thought is that each person might have their own astro signature. This might be a situation where studying a group of people will not reveal as much as studying individuals because there might be a lot of individual variation in what epilepsy is. Now, let me make this additional point to pull all this together. What you do as a researcher is you guess. You throw a dart at the board and you guess. And because you have some expertise in the subject, you should research something that you have a motivation about, interest in, you're involved with, you're excited about it, you want to understand it. And you make a guess based on your understandings. You guess, and then you build the model based on your guess. This is how it's done. There is no external perfect book you can go to that will tell you. You just have to guess. So, based on uh, her understanding and observations of epilepsy and her observations and understanding of astrology, one of her guesses is this could be very different for each person. Each person might have something a little different going on. If that's the case, analyzing individual cases in detail can give you a good starting point. So you make a guess, based on your guess, you decide what to do. Some people think research is all about getting a database, doing an analysis of the group of people, getting statistical significance, having a control group. That is only one kind of research. It is not the best way to proceed if, for example, you have a hunch that each person is going to be so different that getting the group result is going to be difficult. So studying individual cases in detail using something like a um, a time analysis, a time series model means following how things change over time for that person makes sense. So lessons learned here, you decide as a student of astrology, as a student of research methods, what you think makes sense. If your guess is good, you make a discovery. If your guess is bad, you don't find anything. So it's all about making a guess and then pursuing it. So what Stravia has told us in this summary is some of her guesses, how she's gone about and implemented it. She's got some data from family and friends. She wants to analyze some individuals through time to see what's going on. And she's using Python. You need to use some kind of software to analyze. Now, is Python common? Is it a good tool? What are people using for research? It's good to know what is commonly used, what's been found to be successful. Three of the biggest programs used for research are Python, R, and MATLAB. Um, R and Python, very, very popular, very widely used for research. Python is often used for machine learning. R is used for machine learning as well, but one of Python's strong points is machine learning. Python also has, it's a general language that you can integrate with other functions. R is more focused on uh, specifically the research. So yes, Python is a good choice. It's one of the standard choices for this kind of analysis. So she's following a fairly well-endorsed, sensible approach to studying this overall. Does that make sense, Ravia? And anybody else want to make any comments? Are we all good? I'll look in the chat. So I'm trying to take what you guys are saying and build some general principles out of it. Are we good? Yeah, I hope. All right. Um, okay, I got a yes in the chat. All right. Um, now, let's talk about time series analysis. And Sravia, you might, if you're still there, I know you're going to be in and out. You might want to share with us a little bit about it. Um, but time series analysis allows you to do things like see general trends, how previous cases are affecting current cases. Um, and often there's use of moving averages. You're looking at how things change over time. Now, with the uh, what are we talking about here? The sorry, these episodes people are having. How often do they have them? Epilepsy. I couldn't think of the word. Are these something that people have? Like, do you have like 20 cases, 50 cases, 3 cases for 10 people? So the procedures we use will depend on how much data you have.
Right. And there is a cyclic pattern as well, which sometimes can be hidden, the seasonalities, right? And when we are talking about seasonality in astrological terms, um, could be the inner planets. Um, and there is some additional uncertainties around, or what you call is unforeseen um, outside events that could trigger. It could be um, maybe one episode a year, or sometimes it can be 10 episodes a year because the person was put into that environment. Or so we're trying to. I'm trying to see what, if the signature for a given person is it cyclic, or is it those one-time occurrence which have become more over a period of time, which have become more common because of the environment they're in, or because of a outer planet being in one sign for a long term kind of thing. Um, so like I said, I'm trying to see if the astro signature is different from person to person, or if there's one common denominator for every person.
Right. And how much data do you have now? Do you have a lot of cases of epileptic episodes, or like do you have like 20 or 30 or more cases, or do you have hopes of getting that much data?
Um, no, I do not have 20 people, but for a given person, I think I have 10, at least 10 episodes happened, and in a given lifetime, depending on how old the person is. There's um, family members who are as young as 7 years, and there's family members who are as old as 58 or 60 years. Um, the data is all over the place, but it's accurate as to when the episode has happened. So my main reason for collecting the data from family is I'm able to check the accuracy of the data from the medical records. Um,
Good. And you have birth times for these
I,
people?
yes, and for most of them, yeah, which their parents believe is accurate. But again, it's gonna come out. I'll have to see, what I can find once I start doing the analysis. Um, but I think most of what's given is either from the birth certificate or if there's a few people who do not have a birth cert, who do not have accurate time of birth and was just given by their parents. But since the study is going to be individualistic study, I'm trying to see if I can make any um, predictions.
Okay, so let's say we have three people, just as an example.
Mhm.
Suppose we have three people who have had 10 episodes each. They've each had 10 episodes and all have AA data. AA means from a birth record or birth certificate. We want to build what we call a model, means a set of variables that are related to the time that they're having these episodes. As students of astrology, I say students, we're all students, even if you're a professional. Um, how do you think you would, and we can start with Stravia, like, what are your thoughts on building the model? Like, do you want to start doing a machine learning thing in Python or looking at them individually yourself? What are your thoughts about how to get the model started?
I can speak to what I have now. So the way I've set it up is um, a couple of so the lowest level of detail I go to is planetary positions per day, and there is a flag that tells me if a person had an episode that day or not. Um, and sometimes I have 2 or 3 episodes in the same day for a given person. So then the weightage increases. Um, and if I am removing some, inner planets like moon because they have they move very fast, then I roll up the data into week and I count the number of episodes a person had that week. So one row has the lowest level of the first model I have is one row has 1 day's data. Like on a given day, what are the planetary positions for this person? Um, and the second model, I try to roll it up because of the data get bigger and bigger. So sometimes I roll it up to a week, and take just the, outer planets, not the inner planets. I'm trying to play with all possible variations and see if I can find anything.
So you're looking at transit to natal aspects,
That,
like if a
mhm.
transiting planet is conjunct or square a natal planet? Is
Yes,
okay.
the difference between the current position and the natal position.
So your first starting point is not using all this fancy statistics. I mean, a little bit fancy. I mean, you've got a program, but you're basically just seeing what transit to natal things are happening. You're looking at the fast transits and slower transits, kind of making like a spreadsheet or a table of what is, um, what is occurring. It's the same thing I think almost any astrologer would want to do, is just see what transitonatal aspects are occurring. Is that correct?
Exactly, exactly. So I have spanned out the data into columns. So at natal, so the first set of columns are natal positions, and the second set of columns are the transit positions, and the third set of columns are the difference between all the combination of natal planets to the transit planets. So if there is, so these basically doing a feature engineering to try and see if any of these columns get picked up. Sometimes it could be just the aspects, right, from natal to natal aspects, because the person's been having so many frequent episodes. And sometimes it could be just the transits, because there's only a transit with a I don't know, I'm just making this up. I'm not astrologically well versed, but I'm tracking from purely math background. So if there is a aspect of 55 degrees between planet A to planet B, and if that occurs every um, 6 or 7 years, and that's when the person is highly likely to get an episode again. That's probably the aspect between the transit to natal um, planet.
So you're looking at the number of degrees between the planets,
Hmm.
and you're not assuming that it's going to be a traditional aspect according to modern Western astrology. So
Yes,
if it's 52 degrees or 97 degrees or whatever, it really doesn't bother you what it is. You're not assuming that the rules of astrology that emphasize certain aspects is what you should emphasize. You're just going to see what angular distances there are. Is that correct?
that is correct. Because at the end of the day, I don't know what common denominator I could be finding, right? It could be a division of 10. It could be a division of 11. I don't know. I'm just trying to see purely from the math perspective.
Right. Okay. So this is a very important um, issue in your research is what your theoretical framework is. Her theoretical framework, her assumptions, she's assuming, um, let me open up a new file because I want to make some important points here. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to try to work with each of you specifically with what your project is and also generalize the issues so that we all can apply it to whatever we're doing. So uh, I'm going to call this the epilepsy episodes research because her emphasis is on when the epilepsy, when the episode occurs. Um, and her assumption, this is very, very important, is to think clearly about what you're saying because we'll think a lot of things intuitively and we don't articulate it. So in research, it's good to articulate what we're saying. So her assumption is angular distances, natal to natal, it means in the birth chart. Transit to transit means what was happening in the sky at the time of the episode. And transit to natal, the overlay of the two of them. All of these angular distances are important, but um, we don't know which angular distances. So that's a big assumption that angular distances are going to be related to the episode and also not relying on the ideas that it's necessary conjunctions, oppositions, squares, or other things. Now, is this approach good? What do you think? Is it a good approach? that she thinks angular distances are important, but she's not putting an emphasis on the
Bias.
aspects astrologers expect to be important. Do you think it's a good approach?
Mhm.
You're now a research methodologist. I'm asking you as an expert in research methodology, do you think her idea is good? These are the decisions you have to make. Starlene thinks it's good. She puts in the
I
chat.
I would say yes, and maybe I'm wrong, but because she's not going in with assumptions, she's just trying to see, but maybe looking at what could be, like if she thought 11 vibe, for instance, maybe looking at that, but going in without the assumptions, probably the better way to go.
Right. So here's what I would say about it. This is excellent because this is her hunch. There's no rule. It's your hunch based on your expertise. You guess. Anybody's guess is as good as anyone else's. You can read all the astrology books, and some astrologers are going to say, oh, it worked. You can get a Vedic astrology book, an evolutionary astrology book, or this book. They're all going to say different things. So what you do is you guess based on your hunch and follow through on it. That's what she thinks. Go for it. If she said to me, oh, I'm going to look at conjunctions, opposites, and squares, would that be good? Yes. Anything is good. It's whatever you think because you want to test your ideas and you have some experience with astrology. If you don't have experience with astrology, then talk to some people and they're like advisors. It's like if you're president of a country and you don't know very much, you have to depend on your advisors or a company or whatever. You make your guess and you follow through with your guess. That's the only thing that's really important. So this is her hunch. That's fine. Does that make sense to all of you? Because a lot of people, when they're new to research, they're very worried, like, oh, maybe I shouldn't assume this or what. It's nobody knows. That's why we're doing research. If we knew, we wouldn't be doing the research. So just follow your hunch about what you think is going to work. This is like a hunt for gold, like where do you think it is? Set up your research that way. So she thinks angular distances are important. She thinks natal to natal, transit to transit, transit to natal. Any of those could be important, and she's going to look at it. Now, Sravia, you said something about tenths and elevenths. So you're interested in this harmonic or vibrational idea of different divisions of the circle. Is that what you're getting at?
I honestly don't know at this point. The reason I said is um, maybe, it's so if you take an angular distance between planet A to planet B, it could be 50 degrees point. I don't know, something else. And other planet, it could be 62 degrees, right? But at the end of the day, there could be a common denominator of tens, right? Where you're rounding the number up to. If you count 62 as 60, right, the arb or the tolerance that you give for angular distance or what you bucket into, if you're counting a trine as um, anything between um, with a 10-degree orb, or some people consider a 5-degree orb, some people consider a 10-degree orb, right? But if there is a common denominator, that's what I'm interested in. It could be vibrational astrology. At this point of time, I don't know, honestly. Because I've had those instances in my past work where I wasn't even considering the possibility of having a common denominator and it showed up. So things like that. So I'm just kind of open to anything and everything at this point of time. I guess I'm trying to filter out what are the most
Okay. So,
correlated variables.
so what I'm going to do, what we do in research is we try to define things clearly so we have a procedure. So sometimes you have to take like prose and then break it down to specific steps. So what I'm going to say here about this research design is uh, she is looking at specific angular distances and angular distances as a fraction of a circle um, uh, with the same denominator and probably testing different orbs. Orbs, it means the tolerance, how it's never going to be exactly, or almost never exactly 60 degrees 1/6. Um, so she might test different orbs. So there's two things she's going to look at. She's going to look at, maybe she won't look at specific angular distances. A, specific angular distances, and B, angular distances. So if two planets are 1/9, which is 40 degrees, and another two planets are 2/9, which is 80 degrees, she might put those in sometimes we call it a bucket, put them together as one kind of thing. So this is what research is all about. What research is all about is not primarily learning, statistics and all that. That's extremely important, obviously. But before that is just, what is your hunch? What are you thinking? And how can you put that into rules? Because the computer that you're going to use is just a machine. And you've got to break down your thinking into rules. So I'm taking her ideas and I'm just um, like enumerating them. One, she's looking at angular distances. Angular distances of what? Natal to natal, transit to transit, transit to natal. And she's going to not just emphasize the normal, typical aspects. She's going to look at specific angular distances, like a 52 degrees shows up a lot of times. Um, and she'll look at fractions. So little by little, you define what it is you want to look at based on your hunch of how things probably work. And whatever you think is fine. Um, does all this make sense? So if you're interested in doing research, what I recommend is, what is your hunch? What is your idea? How do you think astrology might work? Sometimes someone who's not an expert makes the right guess. So what are you guessing? And what are your rules? After we have all the rules for what it is you want to look for, then we can figure out, okay, how do we analyze this? But don't worry, don't start getting anxious about how to analyze it until you know what it is you want to look for. Take your time, think about it, and define it clearly. Does this make sense to you all? You all following this? It's so simple, but it's not what people do. They think, oh, I need to go to a statistician and they'll tell me how to do it. No, they can't tell you how to do it because they can't read your mind. You have to tell them what you think. And then you have to reduce that down to some simple thing, like I've explained it here. Um, Okay, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. Greg has posted something very important in the chat. Going back to data, he's got something very important here. I'll just read what he posted. The astro.com database. So you can go to astro.com, you can go to astrodatabase.com, is the direct link to it, or go to astro.com and click on the things to get to their database, online database. There's a search function for known diseases, including epilepsy. So that may be a source of other charts to supplement the charts of her family members. For example, Neil Young, he's a singer and songwriter, was diagnosed with epilepsy in 1966. Now, one of the problems with that is she's specifically interested in when the episodes occur, and it might be hard to get that level of detail. If her research was primarily about who has epilepsy and who does not, that would be wonderful. But her main interest is what's triggering the episode, which means you have to be, you have to have epilepsy, but above and beyond that, she wants to see the triggers, the timing. Um, but that's important. Any information about where to get data from. Okay, so thank you for sharing that, Greg. Okay, Emmett also mentions he did a quick search for epilepsy And he's saying only 5 charts with AA, blah, blah, blah. Uh, so Emmett, that search was that at astro.com or a Google search or?
So what I had like a while ago, I started working with the Astro Data Bank, and it's a script that I wrote
Oh,
that will compute the charts and take all the category information out of it. And so I searched what I have, but it's pre-filtered to only take charts that have like the upper ratings.
wonderful. So you wrote a script to facilitate finding this information. That's fantastic. So wonderful. We'll want to, I'm making notes here of all of you that are coming to the meetings, what your interests are, what your skill sets are, what you can contribute. So Emmett has the ability to write these scripts, to do these things. We want to be a team. We want to pull us all together, learn about what each other is doing. Um, and let's do this. Let's have every one of us make some important discoveries. So fantastic. Okay.
Can I can I just butt in
Yeah.
regarding the Astro Data Bank? I just want to warn, a little word of warning regarding the information of certain occurrences, especially. I've frequently found that if one starts looking into the media, one finds times that are different from what Astro Data Bank says. So especially regarding even if it seems to be there, the sort of time series data, be careful with it because it seems like the people that have entered that data, they've just looked at like one news article. And if you look deeper into it, you'll find that there can be divergent times in other news articles. So be be careful about that.
Okay. Thank you very much. So don't take what's in the Astro Data Bank as gospel. You got to do your own search, confirm it because there are some errors and just and it's not always thoroughly researched, basically is what he's saying. It's a fantastic resource. We don't want to sound like we're criticizing this fabulous resource, but it gives us a start, but don't just trust it straight away from your work. Who was out? Who was speaking? I didn't catch it.
So I'm Bernard.
Bernard. Okay, thanks. Great. Okay, I expanded out my screen and now I don't know how to get back. Okay, I guess I'm back. Zoom has changed some things and I'm getting confused here. Okay. Okay, I want to get back to my notes. Okay, good. All right, so let's follow this research a little bit further. We've got an hour and a half, by the way, and we're halfway through, 45 minutes. So I'll do this for maybe another few minutes and then jump over to something else. So basically, to start this research, she's going to make some tables of information that will pull out what is occurring most often. Transit to natal. One thing that we run into in astrology is sometimes called combinatorial explosion. Um, there's different words for it, but there's so many possibilities. Like, are we going to look at, let's say, sevenths of a circle show up in transit to natal? Are we going to look at all group all inner planets, transiting inner planets? What if transiting Mercury makes a lot of sevenths to certain planets, but not to others? Like how you organize and understand the information, there's almost an endless numbers of ways of understanding what you're seeing. And so this is what we call exploratory research. We're exploring what's going on And you're always going to find some kinds of patterns, and you have to decide which ones are not random. So this is just a problem you run into. The more hunches you have about what to look for, the more it helps you narrow down the possibilities. Some people have this feeling that, oh, I'm just going to run a machine learning algorithm and it will find what's going on. Actually, it won't, not with a small database. It's what we call overfitting. It's going to find a lot of things that are just randomly occurring in that data, but is not occurring in other data. So it helps if you have some expectations and if your expectations are correct. There's there's no simple way to make discoveries. If you have too many expectations and your expectations are wrong, you don't find anything. If you're open to anything being possible, well, there's so many things that can happen. It's like, as the saying goes, finding a needle in a haystack. So it's a tricky process. And depending on how clever you are as a student of astrology to like sense what could be going on, that's what helps you make the discovery. So there's no magic bullet. There's just different things you can explore and look at. Okay, that's good. I have my own theoretical framework and how I do this research and what I found. We can discuss that at some point if you want to, but everybody's got different ideas of what to look for and how things work. Well, I will tell you this. Let me tell you one thing that I've found in or I think I found. It's my working idea, like in the accident research and other things. It's kind of interesting, so I'll share it with you for whatever it might be worth to you, which is um, I do something similar um, to what Sravia just said, which is I think each person has their own unique things going on. So what I do is I look for the potential in the person's chart and see when that gets triggered by transits. So this is another way to approach it is first I develop a theory of why people have epilepsy astrologically. Then I find the configuration that I think is inclining to epilepsy, and then I see when that gets triggered. So I cannot do the forecast research until I first come up with an idea of what makes the person inclined to be epileptic. That's just an idea that I use. So whatever ideas, hunches, insights you have, you do the research based on it. So if I was doing the research, that's how I would do it based on my sense of how things work. But everybody has a different sense of how they work. And there's almost no research that's completely conclusive. So you just go with what you think is best.
So, Santina, if you don't mind, I have a question.
Yeah.
This is wonderful. I think this definitely helps us accelerate our work. Sharing your experiences, what worked for you and what didn't. The question I have for you is, let's say you're looking for the astro signature for a potential epilepsy, right? In a natal chart. So
Right.
in your training your model, if just giving you throwing some numbers out there, you probably could be using more than that for training your model. So let's say you've taken 100 people, right?
Right.
And looking for that epilepsy signature. So what is the combination of epilepsy versus non-epilepsy population that you use for you to be able to say a new person that you came across or a new natal chart that you came across has a potential for epilepsy? Meaning, do you take 30 people who have epilepsy and mix and match those with 70 other people who are not diagnosed with epilepsy The reason I'm asking is going back to your overfitting uh, thing, right? And that's all. It, those are the things that we most often run into: overfitting, either overfitting
Right.
or underfitting,
Right.
depending on how distributed your sample is. What's that golden ratio that you use? Is there, if there is one, how do you tackle it?
Yeah, wow, those are excellent questions. So, research is an art as much as a science. There's many, many different approaches. So there's no one approach that's the right one or even close to it. But what I do is I start with exploratory research with some strong guesses. So for epilepsy, for example, I suspect 11 vibration. So the planets are distributed in 11ths in the circle. That's my guess. I'm not sure which planets. You might think Mercury, Uranus, but from other research, it's not always obvious. So what I do is I look at the distribution of 11 vibration pairs compared to a random distribution. So I use the Sirius astrology software for that. I'm currently little by little starting and hopefully have more time in the future to migrate a lot of this to the R software and do even better searches. But right now I'm using the Sirius software, which does a pretty good job at finding those things. So I go in with some guesses as to what to look for. I'll show you how I do it. I don't want to emphasize one particular program. I don't know if other popular astrology programs like Solar Fire can do something similar. So you're either going to use some kind of astrology research software or um, research software and add the astrology features you want to it. A lot of people are using software like Python or R and then adding the astrology that they need into that software. But I do things like this. I would go to, um, okay, I'll go into the search feature. What's important here is the concept. And I go into this thing, exploratory research, and then I'll change the category to Astro Databank category. It'll access the Astro Databank categories directly from the software. That's the good news. The bad news is it's not up to date, but at least I can do it. And I'll go to diagnosis psychological, and I don't see epilepsy here. So the search at astro.com might have some things that are not available here. So I'm not able to do it. I might have to.
Santino, look under medical because it might not be our major diseases. It might not be psychological.
Okay, where is medical?
Diagnosis, and then it says major diseases. I don't know. It could be that one. The guess.
Oh, you're right. Thank you. Diagnosis, major diseases, epilepsy. Thank you so much. Okay, so it found, oh, there's Neil Young. So it found total number of charts 30. I have any accuracy. If I change the accuracy to say A or better, there's 21. Okay, 21 is enough to at least get some idea. I like to work with reasonably accurate data, so I'm going to use these 21, and I'm going to click OK. Now what I'll do is I'll look at harmonic. Let's try Mercury-Uranus, because that is one possibility. And I'm going to click on this thing to compare to the transit's distribution. This is not a perfect control group, but it's a fairly good control group. It's going to compare the Mercury-Uranus harmonics of those 21 people against the overall distribution of Mercury-Uranus during the time periods that they were born. And so I click OK. And oh, I think there's a bug in the software. This, I think, is not working with the categories. Oh, it doesn't work. I have to contact Cosmic Patterns and see if they can fix it. So what I do, there's a bug here, and it just goes around and around forever when I pick an AstroDataBank category. So I got around that. There's a way to move that data into another category, and then I can research it. So this thing is gone crazy. So I have to go into another part of the program, and I can move this data into a category. But to show you the idea, I'll just go to change category, and I won't use an AstroDataBank category. I'll use the categories built into Sirius, and I'll use medical psychological. Let me just do mental illness. This is not epilepsy, but to show you the idea of how this works. And I will, here's the orb. This is the orb in the harmonic chart. Anyway, now I'll run it for Mercury, Uranus. I don't necessarily expect 11 vibration, but what it's telling me is that with Mercury, Uranus, 11 vibration is not strong. 18 vibration is, if the line goes up, it's more than the random distribution. So this is a way that I explore what vibrations are occurring, like 18, 54, and I'll see if that makes any sense. I find that specific categories work better than general broad categories like mental illness. So it'll work better if we focus on a specific mental illness. This is what we did with the bipolar disorder research. And so we just go through and see maybe Mercury, Saturn would be related. And I just make notes on what things are common using this. It gives me an approximate idea of things that might be important. And then from there, I build what we call an astrosignature to validate that these things are occurring in this group of people. Then I run a forecast that shows if the graph goes up when the person has a mental illness episode. Anyway, I've summarized a lot of information in just a few minutes. But to
I
answer,
have a question before you
Yeah.
get off that screen. I'm sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt you. Just I wanted to see that screen. At
Yeah.
the bottom, there's the columns of numbers. Are those what we see in the graph? If we wanted to look for it through the numbers instead of the visual graph?
right, I didn't show this, but yeah, these numbers here are the numbers that are plotted here.
Okay, that was my
So,
question.
yeah. So it's telling me, let's see at the bottom. No, it doesn't tell me. 1, 2, 3. Let's say 7 is much lower, and 7 is lower at 290. So this, yeah, these are the numbers that are getting plotted in the graph.
Okay,
Yeah, if you want to see
thanks.
what the numbers are.
Because what I was thinking with this type of research specifically, it might be easier to put them in an Excel to see the patterns, but maybe that's just my brain. I like the way it's laid out to see the trends in that way, but I was also wondering if that could be done with those numbers. So thank you for explaining that.
Yes, you could take those numbers, put them in Excel, and then look at it. This software is wonderful. It's better than nothing. I've been using it as it is for, I don't know, many, many years. And now I'm getting tired of it and I want to elevate it to the next level. So any software, has limits. And, I want to write software that's going to go through, for example, why won't the software go through, do all the pairs? Actually, it will do it, but it does it in a clumsy way and pick out the patterns for me and say, oh, guess what? Mercury to Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune is high in 19 vibration. I mean, it could just go through all those pairs, find it, and look for it. it all requires just a lot of software development. And I'm thinking of moving it into the R software so that it's free and available, and you can use the fantastic graphics that are in the R software. But right now, this is the tool that works best for me. I'm hoping within 3 to 5 years, we'll have even better tools.
And so Santino, one other question.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. So when you say vibration, is it so let's talk about the 18 vibration that you're referring to, right? Does that mean the planets are at a multiples of 18 or aspects are multiples of 18?
The aspects, when we say it's 18, what it means, when I say something is 18 vibration, I'll just make a note here. So the term 18 vibration is the same as 18th harmonic. And what these terms, 18th harmonic or 18 vibration, they're just different words for the same thing, means that the two planets are 1/18, 2/18, 3/18, 4/18, etc., up to 9/18, because we measure the shortest distance. And then you might say a pure 18 vibration is only 1/18, 5/18, etc. The ones that do not reduce down to a smaller fraction. Like 2/18 is also 1/9. 3/18 is also 1/6. So
Right.
it's ambiguous terminology. Sometimes when we say 18 vibration or 18th harmonic, we mean all of these. 1/18, 2/18, 3/18, 4/18. And sometimes we filter out the ones that reduce, and they're pure 18ths. So the term is ambiguous. And depending on the situation, sometimes you're looking at all of these, sometimes you're looking at only the pure ones, the ones that do not reduce down. Yeah. And one of the problems with that feature, that exploratory research, is it does not remove the ones that reduce down, which is a huge problem for me. So, it's just features I want, so I'm going to program it into R so we can have all the options we want. Or somebody else could program all this stuff, but we have some good research software, but we don't have anything freely available that does a lot of advanced things for us. So, for example, Sravya's, writing her code in Python, and very often that's what you have to do. Because there may not be software to do it for you.
And I have a little bit of piece of code that does that for us. Like it filters down the reduced harmonics that you're talking to. Maybe I can it over to you through email, but I think, and it also tells me if an aspect is 100% closer to the harmonic, or it kind of gives it a ranking depending on how close it is to the harmonic. So I'll send the piece of code to you. Maybe that will help.
Right. So that would be wonderful, because if we go to the Cosmobiology Institute website, we have a few tabs here of topics. If we go to software, so for Cosmobiology Institute, a very important component of research and education is software. Plans are underway to make available open source software. So what we want to do is we want to have software that's open source, free. Python is free. And if somebody writes code in Python and they make it available, that means anybody can download Python and run it for free. The great thing about Python, not only is it free, I mean, the base and most of the system, there's always things you can buy, is free, but it's extraordinarily powerful and flexible and widely used. Same is true of R. So R and Python are great. And if people write code and they're generous and they want to make it available, we will put a link here. So we can put a link to Python code for whatever, and we'll put a link to it. We can also give credit to who contributed it with links to your website and all that sort of stuff so that you do get some benefit from doing it. But one of the things I'm really excited about with Cosmobiology Institute is the development of free and inexpensive software. Another thing we want to do is make the download of the Astro Databank software free. We have to negotiate that with Alice Trindle. I think he will agree with it. And it's fairly easy to write the code for that to be downloaded and updated regularly. So we'll have the Astro Databank. We can have other databases of data and software. And the software can be complete programs or just routines that other people can use to build their software. So that would be wonderful. I'm planning to start contributing some R scripts, we call them, and they'll be here to do particular things. So over time, this is going to grow into a massive resource so people can just go in and do what you want to do. We're like building this from the ground up. Yeah, so that would be wonderful. If you contribute that, we'll start making it available. Is this?
Santino,
Yeah, go ahead.
may I ask you a little bit more about your theoretical framework? Because as I understood, you emphasize astrosignatures, which is quite common for astrologers to focus on the natal horoscope. But of course, the natal horoscope was just a transit horoscope originally, right?
Yes.
So if I can tie it into the work that I know that you've done, now you spoke of epilepsy. So of course, there I would say, sure, you have to look at the natural disposition of someone, and then the natal would be natural. But you've also done work on accidents,
Yes.
and of course, there the issues become more complicated because there you can have an accident that comes entirely out of the blue. That has nothing to do with agency at all, for the victim. So someone becomes just entirely a victim. But in your work, would you say that there's still results pointing to the natal horoscope?
Okay, so yeah, those are good questions. In my research on accidents, I had people describe the accident in detail. And what I found is I built a model for accidents. And the first model I built and continued to be supported in the later research with additional features is midpoint structures, transit to natal midpoint structures where Mars and Uranus combine with a third planet. So if transiting Mars is at the Sun-Uranus midpoint, that occurred more often when there was an accident than when there's not an accident. So what I found was that, the formula worked for a lot of the people, but not all of them. So I was looking at the ones where the formula did not work, like they were in an accident and these midpoint things were just not happening at all. So the formula worked better than random, but very far from perfect. And then I noticed that every case, just almost every case, like 90% of cases where it didn't work, the person was completely a victim. Like they were in a parked car or they were a passenger in the car. When the formula worked, the person was, if it was a car accident, they were the driver of the car. And they would say things like, oh, I was in a rush to going to work. I was driving carefully, but I was in a bit of a rush. So when the astrology worked, it was an accident, but it was not completely an accident. Um, so there does seem to be a difference, depending on the circumstances. When the person had no agency involved at all, they just like they were passengers in the car. It was a typical situation. I was not able to find anything. There might be something there, but I couldn't find it.
Hmm.
So,
So it's an unpleasant subject, but I've done some research on mass shootings, and what I find is that um, I've looked at where are the violent planets. Which those are can be discussed, of course, but not important right now. And my hypothesis was that uh, in the agents of mass shootings, the violent planets should be present in the astrosignature that is activated, but usually just by simple transit uh, in the natal of the agents. I'm sorry, it's like 3:15 here in the morning, so I'm a bit tired. um,
yeah.
but then my hypothesis would be that, or was that, for the victims, there would be violent planets in the transit signature, and that would hook onto something simple in the natal of the people, especially, well, usually something that is a life significating factor. I didn't look at people that survived. I looked at those that were fatally injured. And my preliminary research there uh, seems to be significant. So I think it's worthwhile to actually consider what one's theoretical framework is from some scientific viewpoint, where you divide occurrences into how much influence is involved in with the natural disposition and more chance occurrences in the environment.
Wow, that's exciting. So here's another thing Cosmobiology Institute will be doing. Um, if you've done some research, probably your research is not ready for a PhD dissertation or something like that because you're one person. Most of us are working alone, and but is it at least a good start? Probably yes, for a lot of us. What we can do is you could write up the fundamentals of what is the data that you gathered? How was the data gathered? And you want to make a note of how much selection bias there is. Like, was there a list on the internet of major things, or how was the data gathered? And always, we want to report honestly. If something's not done perfectly, that's normal. Most research is not perfect. Um, but you tell us the strengths and weaknesses of how it was done, and then what are the findings? What did you compare it to? How did you come up with the conclusion? Even if it's a preliminary study, at least you've collected the data, at least you've totaled things up, at least you saw something, and then also um, what astrological theories are supported, if any, by the research. Usually we report research that has some positive finding because it's more interesting. But research that doesn't find anything that people expect to happen can also be helpful. So if you guys write up a little summary of what you've done, it does not need to be done according to the academic requirements for journal articles and everything, we can start putting up software that's available, databases that are available, findings that are available. It'll all be at cosmobiology.org for people to explore and work with. So, if you want to take the time to do that, in some cases, people have already put this together and make it available. And, of course, we'll credit you and give links to your website or whatever as well. So you do get something personal out of it. Yeah, but we're ready to start making all of this available to the public. So, yeah, because that sounds very, very interesting. And people can build from it. I would love to see the details. I'm sure a lot of other people would too. Okay. All right. Does anybody have any other questions or topics you want to get into or pick up with something? We've got another 15 minutes or so.
So I just have a quick question. I don't know if you know the answer, but
Yeah.
because I just noticed that like when you search for epilepsy, you got way more charts than I got. So I want to figure out why. I had trouble pulling the category data, so that might have probably has to do with it. But do you happen to know, is Sirius able to access the private data in the Astro Data Bank?
The what data?
The private data, like some of the data is marked as
Oh, the
private.
private. No, it does not.
Okay.
And the Sirius does not use the current Astro Databank data. It was downloaded years ago. So it's whatever was in the public Astro Databank data, as of, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago or something. And that's getting increasingly annoying. I did an update to my research on bipolar disorder, and I went to astro.com and I searched there, which is tedious, as opposed to having it right in the software um, and accessible. All of this stuff is just a matter of programmers losing sleep programming this stuff. For those of you who do software development, you know it's very tedious and time consuming. But Astro Databank does provide tools to download their data, and with a lot of restrictions. And I think they will agree that because we are a serious research institute, that we could provide code to download and update that data into research software. It's just a matter of taking the time to do it. I had done that using web scraping, very, very difficult, many years ago when I worked for Cosmic Pattern Software. But since then, Alois Trindle, the head of Astro.com, has made an easier way to download the data.
Thank
And
you.
I hope that gives the ability to access all the categories and everything. I'm not sure. Yeah, so Sirius is good, but it's not, it's out of date. Still, it's still good. Still helps. Better than nothing. Okay. All right. Do we have any other questions, topics, things you want to go over? We have another 10 minutes. We can end early if you want. Let me look in the chat in case some of you have a mic that doesn't work. I keep forgetting to look at the chat. Nope, nothing else in the chat. Are we good? Nothing else?
Actually, I'm wondering, how can we access your research on bipolar disorder?
Two ways. I wrote a book about it. The book is not it's hard to find. It's available at astrologysoftware.com. The publishers of it, if you want to buy the book, I'll show you that really quickly. If
Yeah.
you go to astrology software, astrologysoftware.com, and then you go under here. No, where is it? Oh, no, not astrology software. I'm sorry, Astro Software. Astrosoftware.com. Go to astrosoftware.com and go under products, go down to bookstore.
Mm.
So products, bookstore, and then you'll see it, the Astrology of Bipolar Disorder.
Oh, cool.
It's kind of expensive, $40 plus shipping. It's not available any other way except as a physical book from this source. The other thing you can do is totally free and has advantages and disadvantages compared to the book. So it's a really good thing, is you can go to YouTube. And a few months ago, I decided to make the information available for free. I must have been in a generous mood that day. So if you go to uh, Cosmo, Cosmic Cybernetics, for example, or my name, whatever, and then this is my YouTube page. They call it a channel. And on a desktop, there's this search function, or actually, it might also appear here under latest videos, because I did it recently. Is I've made over 700 videos. If you have nothing to do for the next 3 years, you can watch them all. Okay, what I'll do is I haven't been able to find this on my mobile phone, but on a laptop or desktop, there's this little magnifying lens. You can click on it and type bipolar disorder. And what YouTube does is it prioritizes the channel you're on. So it's going to prioritize my channel. Otherwise, it's just going to show you stuff. And there it is. I made 9 videos, I think.
Wow.
They're about a half hour long. So I went into great detail. This fellow interviewed me. I don't do many interviews, but I agreed to do this interview with a guy. And he had all these technical questions about the research and weaknesses. And he inspired me to redo some of the research at the end of the book to make sure that what I said there is actually correct. It's so easy to make mistakes. And a big sigh of relief, it is correct. It was confirmed when I redid it with the latest database data. So, it's time consuming to watch videos because this is probably about 4.5 hours of videos or something. But that will explain the research in pretty good detail. And then the book goes into a whole bunch of other things that are not in these videos. It shows you how, talking about forecasting, how I made predictions of when there would be an episode. And I showed other mental illnesses like Marilyn Monroe and Judy Garland both died of a drug overdose. And I create the formula for their proclivity to mental instability or emotional instability. And it peaks exactly. I mean, it just blew my mind. It peaks exactly when they died of a drug overdose. It's just pretty startling. So there's some cool stuff in the book that's not in the videos.
Cool. Thank you for sharing all this.
Yeah, you're welcome. And also cool stuff in the videos that's not in the book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So our time is just about up. Anything else? I'm just really excited that we're together. We have people working in Python, in other things, creating these scripts to download all this stuff. We're going to build here at Cosmobiology Institute. It's all, so far, nobody's gotten paid for anything. This is just labor of love. We're going to build an academic level of astrology that's going to move mainstream. I'm pretty convinced that astrology actually works, and it's just a matter of doing the work to demonstrate it. And to do the work, we need a lot of hardworking, talented people to get involved. So this is kind of my dream, is to build this institute and develop this whole new discipline of an evidence-based astrology. So it's very exciting. I'm very happy that all of you are here and that you're working on all these things with time series analysis and all this very cool stuff. Any last things anybody wants to say? Are we good? We'll sign off for tonight. All good. Let me bring up my chat, see if you guys are typing in the chat. Okay. I don't know what I've done to my Zoom. Okay. Well, we have a nice big crowd here. Thank you all for coming. This is exciting. All right. Here's my chat. Okay. We have someone here from Iran. How cool is that? We have an international group. Anybody want to share where they're from before we sign off? And we're going to get to know each other. You know, we met a few of us tonight. And, you know, as a team, we're going to figure this stuff out. Okay. We've got people from Australia, Florida, Pennsylvania. Emmett's from Pennsylvania. Greg is from Florida. We'll get to know each other's name. We have Linda here from Louisville, Jennifer from Toronto, Ashley from Cleveland, Ohio. Anybody else want to introduce themselves? I mean, even if you're just watching, you don't feel like you have a lot to contribute yet or in the near future, that's fine. Okay, guys. All right. Another one from Florida. Starlene's from Florida. Okay. I'm here in Cincinnati, Ohio, by the way. And Janice from Canada, St. Catharines, Ontario. Okay. Very cool. I love to see the international stuff. It's so awesome. Okay, guys, thank you very much. I will see you next month on the 4th Tuesday, and we will carry on. In the meantime, I think you all have my email address, santino@astrologydc.com. Email me. I'm sometimes very slow. I will try to respond within a month before the next meeting. And where we're going from here is to work with you on the research you want to do or anything you want to cover with the research. Also, we're having Cosmobiology Institute is having a meeting on, Starlene, maybe you can help me with this or somebody else. I think it's going to be on December
The 6th.
the 6th. So on December 6th I think at the same time, 8 p.m. Eastern time, we're going to have an hour-and-a-half presentation of questions and answers about Cosmobiology Institute. What it's about, where we're going, what our plans are, and it's just an open discussion to talk about it. These research meetings are specifically for people who want to do academic level research. Okay, you're welcome, everyone. Thank you all for being here, and I hope to see you again next month. Stay in touch. Let me know what you want to do, where you want to go. I'm just the team leader, right? So it's up to us to what we want to do to make this happen. Okay, guys, thank you so much. Good night. God bless. Namaste.
Night.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.